Hey there, Chris.
Hey,
How's it going?
good. Thanks for willing to do this.
Ah, no worries. No worries, man. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
So I can just jump around then in terms of roles in your career and everything.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's talk. Let's do it.
So is it correct that the first any kind of paid acting job that you had was doing a voiceover soccer commercial?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm trying to think back. I believe that is the first. The I mean, I did this thing while I was still in university. It was some mob movie thing where I played a bad guy, but it was like I don't know. I can't even remember. It was, it's like 30 odd years ago. I remember getting paid for it, but I can't remember exactly what it was. And I mean, I've never even seen it. I don't even know what it was. So that would technically be my first paid job, but like I said, I don't really remember. So the first paid job that I ever did that I remember and was actually, like a union gig and stuff like that, was that Mastercard commercial for it was about soccer and it was about Italian kids playing soccer and stuff. And I'm Italian, so it was a kind of really fun thing. It ran during the World Cup, and I remember my dad loving it because we're Italian and
Hmm.
so, we love soccer. We're crazy soccer freaks. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's cool.
Well, I think the movie that you're talking about, nothing. It was called Nothing to Lose.
Oh my God, I think you're right.
Yeah.
You've done your homework, my friend. Jesus, yeah, yeah. I think you're right. I'm honestly, I've never seen it. Don't know. I don't remember. But I remember doing it. It was like I was still in Ryerson, still in university. It was like the last year, and I can't. I don't even remember the details of it. I just remember playing some sort of bad guy or something. I mean, it's so long ago.
Yeah.
You think it's so funny that you'd think in your career that you'd remember. Like I remember when I first started out, you remember everything, and you'd
Right.
think you remember every job you've done. But sometimes people will, mention something, and I'll be like, "I did that? What?" Like, I mean, maybe it's just old age, or, but and then all of a sudden I'll be like, and they'll tell me about it, and I'll be like, "Oh yeah, you're right. I did do that gig."
Mhm. Well, because around that same time too, you and Katie Griffin were in that TV movie called Getting Gotti.
Yes, yes. Shortly after that, that was actually what I would consider really my first real like role in
Okay.
a movie. Yeah, yeah. Katie and I, we were in that together. Actually, I think we had a scene even where we were all sitting around at a table. I think it was for CBS, Getting Gotti, with Lorraine Bracco. I remember that. Tony Dennison played Gotti.
Yep.
I actually remember that because that to me is my first official job. So I actually remember the details. Plus, it was, I think, with Nothing to Lose, I only shot like one day, you know. But with that, there was multiple days of shooting and stuff. So it was like my first real kind of, role and, like a network show. And so that was kind of cool.
Hmm.
That's what I remember. And then I ended up becoming friends with Reno Romano, who was in it, and Katie, and we're still friends to this day. So
Hmm.
yeah.
And I know too that you had a really involved audition process for the Ace Ventura
Oh yeah.
animated series.
Wow, Chris, you do your homework, my friend. Wow. Yeah, yeah, that was crazy. Originally auditioned for Ace for the
Yeah.
role of Ace, and I had multiple callbacks for that. And then it came down to myself and Michael. And at the final audition, I had a feeling. I could just tell by the way, like the way we never auditioned together, but I could just tell talking to the producers and things they were saying that I was sort of like, I think they're going to go with Michael. Like, this is just my gut instinct. And even if they had gone with me, I was going to suggest this anyways. But I was like, I did a really good impersonation of the guy who played Dance in the actual film.
Yeah.
And I was only 22 at the time. And I mentioned it to them. And I was like, hey, have you guys found your Dance? And they were like, no, he's going to be a recurring character. And they were like, why? And I said, well, I think I do a pretty good impersonation of it. And they were like, you're 22, dude. Like, there's no way you're going to play, do an impersonation of an 83-year-old guy or however old he was. at the time. And I said, I think it's pretty good. I don't know, you know, and they said, all right, let's hear it. And so I did it for them. And the next thing I know, about a week or so later, I get a call and they're like, they want to hire you for Chica Dance.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, drats, I didn't get Ace, but you know, at least I got something.
And did you kind of have a preference for voiceover opposed on camera, or?
No, I can't say I do. I mean, I love both of them. I mean, there's something unbelievably freeing about voiceover. There's no, you know, the beauty of voiceover is you can pretty much be anything, play anything within reason. I mean, obviously there's certain roles I don't think would be appropriate for me to play, but you know, there's people more appropriately suited now. Now that we're much more, you know, sensitive to stuff like that, and we're more aware. You know, I mean, back when I started out, that kind of stuff was, you know, was free for all. You play whatever you get offered and stuff, and I actually completely agree with that kind of casting now. I think it makes sense. But still, with voiceover, you know, that said, the freedom to be anything, and when I say that, I mean things like I can be an alien. I can be, you know, I can be an 83-year-old Chica Dance in a TV series when I'm in my early 20s. You can play. I mean, I've got a couple auditions that just came in today for like some weird character that's a cross between like a bunny, a dog, a cat. Like it's all these weird animals amalgamated into one. And I'm like, you know, they sent, and there's a photo of it. So I just came in just before we were about to, you know, sit down and do this. And I'm looking at the picture, and what's fun about that is that your imagination just gets to run wild with whatever you're going to do. To a certain extent, you get to do stuff like that on film as well, in TV and film as well, depending on the roles. Like I've done some pretty outrageous stuff. I've had some fun stuff for Disney where I've got to just, you know, create, you know, wild characters, like in Jackal Johnson and Cheetah Girls, and
yeah.
But you're still, with film and TV, you're still, I don't want to use the word trapped because that's negative, but you know, you're still restricted to my physical body. Mm-hmm. There is like at some point, you know, if somebody wants me to play a 7-foot tall, you know, Hulk Hogan or something like that, you know, I'm probably not going to go with me. You know what I mean? Like I might be able to do a Hulk Hogan voice, you know what I mean? Like voiceover, but I'm not going to be playing it in real life. And so that's one of the things I absolutely love about voiceover, is that complete freedom to be anything in any moment. And also I love that freedom of when you're auditioning, people, if somebody doesn't know me personally, has never met me, they have no preconceived ideas. So whatever is on that microphone is what they see and hear. Right. You know, sometimes the unfortunate thing, which I hate, is like when, you know, you have to slate your name, or obviously your name is attached to the file. So that can sometimes influence a little bit the way somebody perceives, you know what I mean? Because we you know, we humans are very much like, we gather information quickly and we process it. And so sometimes things like that will influence. I've had that happen where they're like, oh, he's Italian. And I'm like, I mean, yeah, sure, I am. My father's Italian, my mother's English, you know what I mean? Like, mm-hmm. You know, so it's, but it's that happens much more in film and television, in live action stuff, and so I love the freedom of voiceover. But I think I've found in my career that they both influence each other. You know, like sometimes the stuff I do on film and TV or on stage, something will happen and I'll be like, oh, you know, that I could probably use that when I'm in front of a microphone, you know, or. Because even when you're in front of a microphone, sometimes people think that we just stand still and speak. But I mean, if I'm doing animation or a video game, or even sometimes when I'm recording a commercial, depending on what it is, I'll be using my body. Like if I'm supposed to be running, I'll be running on the spot as I'm recording, you know, because that influences the sound, you know. Mm-hmm. So the physical, the real life physical work that you do influences what you do in front of a microphone. The imaginative stuff that I get to do in front of a microphone can oftentimes influence the things that I'll do on camera or on a stage. Mm-hmm. You know, because the freedom of being able to, you know, just use your imagination wherever it wants to take you in front of a microphone frees you up sometimes, and you know, plop little ideas in your mind where you go, you know, I could use that voice, you know, if I'm playing this character, or you know, even if it's on film or TV. Mm-hmm. So So I love the two, and that's why I get asked that question all the time on panels or interviews, and they always say, what do you like more? And I'm like, it's impossible to choose. To me, it's all acting, and so therefore I love it all. I love, it doesn't matter to me. I remember early in my career, there was a friend of mine back in Toronto, and he refused to do commercials, and he was like, I just don't like it. I don't like that whole medium. It's it's like these 30-second little bits and stuff. And he's like, I want to create characters and stuff. And I remember thinking, but there's a challenge to that too. There's a challenge to being authentic or creating something when you have very, very little time. So creating little magical moments, for a commercial, sometimes it's just a look, but that look can people be like, oh my God, this is the greatest commercial. I did a commercial, it was, I think it was for butter, where I ended up, it's a hilarious commercial, won a bunch of awards, and was included as one of the funniest commercials in the world for years. And I'm about to ask this woman that I'm dating to marry me, and she goes, hold on a second, and she runs into the kitchen and she's like, Granny, I think Dennis is going to ask me to marry him. And this little old woman playing the grandmother is like, oh, I always liked him. And so instead of getting the margarine to put on the muffins she was making for us, she grabs the butter. It was a butter commercial, and she puts the butter on, right? So the commercial cuts to the fiance or the girlfriend brings out the muffins, and she's like, so Dennis, was there something you were going to ask me? And I take a bite of the muffin, and I'm like, who made these? And then it cuts to a shot of just our backs as the camera's pushing up, and it's like the music, dun, 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 dun. People are getting married and there's a priest, and then it swings around and it's me marrying the grandmother. Because her muffins were so good. And so it's a very funny commercial. And then like the tagline was butter. There's nothing like no substitute or something like that. I still remember it because it was a really clever commercial. And I mean, just those little looks, like the whole commercial was the fastest little cuts. Like every single moment in the commercial was just little cuts of me like, Mary. And then she's like, hang on a second. And so it was tiny little moments all cut together. And everything was done in just quick little looks. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And to me, there's something magical about being able to, it's those right moments that make something work. And so I've always felt like, to me, there's nothing really off limits in terms of what I'll do with stage, film, TV, voiceover. Sometimes there's been times where I'll be asked to audition for something, and I just kind of feel like I'm maybe not the best choice. So I might pass on it thinking that there's better people suited. But in 30 years, I rarely do that, just because even if I don't think I'm right for something, I often go audition anyways. Sometimes even if I don't get the job, I learn something from just doing the audition, especially when you're auditioning for things that you're not right for, because it's forcing you to think about things that you wouldn't normally consider yourself, but you can still expand. Like when you play around with stuff like that, you go, oh, I wouldn't cast myself in it, but that's an interesting thing that I can do. I didn't know I could do that, right? I will say there's nothing like being on a live stage. That would probably be, that would probably be just from a purely performing standpoint, being on a live stage in front of, 1,000 people or a few thousand people. There's nothing better than that. I mean, but that's an immediate thing. And that's something, I think any actor who loves that kind of, who has done that, most actors, 99% would say that's their first kind of love, just because of that immediate interaction, because even though you're not having an actual dialogue with the audience is a character. Anytime you do a show, their laughter feeds you. You can hear them if they're crying, if something's you know what I mean? Or if they're dead silent because something's so moving. That it fuels the performance, and you don't get that oftentimes in behind a mic, or even when you're filming. You get dialogue between your other fellow actors, but that audience feedback can be pretty exhilarating.
Mm-hmm. So I know around the same time that Sailor Moon would have came to the picture that you did those two TV movies with Kerry Russell and Kate Jackson.
Yeah. Wow. Yes, I did. God, what were they called? You probably know.
College Town and When Innocence Is Lost.
Oh yeah. When Innocence Is Lost. I remember that with Kerry Russell. I think it was that College Town movie was renamed. I'm fuzzy on that one.
Okay.
The one with Kerry Russell, I remember. That was actually my first lead role in a film.
Okay.
Actually was, the male kind of lead in it. Yeah. That's, again, going way back.
And what was your experience on Urban Legend?
I wasn't on it for very long. I think I shot maybe 2 days, or maybe 3, because of the special effects stuff with the car accident and all that. That was a weird shoot because it got so much attention, and it was, and because, without spoiler alert, it's been 20 odd years, so I don't think I'm spoiling anything for anybody, but my character's death is the whole reason that movie happens. Why the girl goes out and, because they played the chicken with the lights with me, and then I ended up dying. But you don't find that out until the end of the film. But what's weird about that movie is, I'm a small role in it. But most of my stuff was shot separately and away from the cast, except for the girl that played my girlfriend in it. We had like a quick little, where she sees me laying dead or whatever. So I actually, we hung out on set that day. So it's such a weird, I remember when it came out and got quite a bit of hype and everything. And I was like, I barely felt like I was part of it. You know what I mean? Yet, because the whole movie revolves around the fact that I was murdered or killed in a car accident, it was significant. But from my perspective, I was like, I remember when I was doing it, I was like, it's a couple days shooting, great, it'd be a paycheck. Had no clue that it was going to be. I still get asked questions about it, and it always makes me laugh because I go, for me, it's, other than it was fun to do, some of the stunt stuff and the drive. I didn't do the actual driving. They had a stunt guy do that, but the special effects and being there to watch it all happen, and it was a fun shoot from that perspective, and it was super easy. I barely did anything. It was a smaller part in the movie, so it's not, when I look at my career, I've done so many other things, and yet that one has quite a bit of fans, and ended up becoming like, how many urban legends did they make? I lost track, like, so I found that ironic too, but fun. I love anything, all the stuff I was a part of has always, it's either taught me something or or it's been just fun to be part of.
And with Sailor Moon, one of the main things I was going to ask was, everybody else I've talked to so far who's been part of it had like their own kind of interaction with Nicole. What was your experience with Nicole?
She was just, I love Nicole. She was a sweetheart. She was wacky. She was really interesting. She was a wild, she was fun to work with. She could be a task driver. Like we would knock out those episodes. Some days we'd, when I was doing the Tuxedo Mask stuff, we'd bang out like 10 episodes in, 4 hours. And you just, I can't even remember sometimes what I was doing, And so like when I go to conventions or people ask me specific questions about episodes, and I go, honestly, it's just a blur to me sometimes. Depending, there's certain episodes I remember, certain moments, but most of it, we were just knocking that stuff out. And she, I could be wrong about this. I'm sure other people have spoken about it, but I think she invented the Rhythma Band. I don't know if she actually, I think she was one of the people that created the Rhythma Band technique, which is how we dubbed the show. It's a very rare thing to use. I don't even know if it's still people use it at all. But I will say, in my 30 years of doing this and doing tons of dubbing, I think it is the most effective. Like that's why when you dub, you can knock stuff out so fast with the Rhythma Band, because it's very precise. But what's fascinating about it too is it's a real technique, and once you get it, it makes sense. Yeah. But when you first start to do it, it is like, it's just bizarre. It's a weird thing. I'm sure have you ever seen it? Have you ever seen it in action or had anybody? Yeah. And I'm sure you've had the other cast members talk about it. It's this giant projection up on a wall, and then there's like a line, and whenever your word hits the line, that's when you say it. Yep. And what's fun about it, sometimes, when you get into, pardon the pun, the rhythm of it, which is why they call it Rhythma Band, because it's a little bit like singing. It's a little bit like there's a rhythm to it, Once you really start to turn it out, like that's why we knock out like 10 episodes in a day. you get into this like pure rhythm where you're just like, yeah, just keep it coming. And you almost don't even need to read in advance. Like we would always, Nicole would always, we'd screen the, whatever scene we're doing, and then she'd play the band so you could get a feel for what's coming, and then rewind and then do it. And once you get it, I mean, you knock it out. It's perfect. It's like so precise, because your eyes get used to doing this thing where you watch the line, where the word's hitting the line, but your peripheral can pick up what's coming.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in that pocket, when you first start doing it, even after I'd done it, for years, but the first time you walk into a session, it always takes you a few minutes, like maybe 15 minutes or so, to get that focus where everything, okay, right, I focused on the line, I can speak to, and then you're picking up the peripheral. But once you're in the pocket, you're like, I don't want to stop. I just want to keep going, because now I've got it, it's in my body, and it's fun. It's kooky too. Like when you have to do stuff like screams, or, and they're writing, like if the word is like, and they'll write like 15 A's and then 10 H's, and you're just going, and your peripheral's watching, because you're thinking, do I have enough air to make it to the end of that H? Like where's the end? When's it coming? Like, you know what I mean? So, but it was super fun. I really enjoyed it. I'm a singer, so that kind of stuff, it's almost like being conducted. You know what I mean? Like, and the rhythm band is conducting you through the scene, so it's kind of fun. Nicole, I mean, she was a riot. We had some fun times, man. She's, but again, like I said, she was a taskmaster. When we got in there, she was just like, let's get this stuff going. Like, I adored her, and she was such a big personality. Sad that that she's gone.
Mm-hmm. And could you find anything right away to personally relate to Darien with?
If you're a kid who's gone to high school, I think you're going to relate to something of any one of those characters. Whether it's Darien or Sailor Moon or Serena, or or any of them. And I think that's what made the show so great. I think that's why it's so beloved and still, out there, and people, I mean, massive amounts of fans, and it's because it had that. It was relatable. It talked about themes, especially going back, when we were doing that show. I mean, to have female superheroes, it was one of those, and they're young girls, and in high school, there wasn't a lot of that out there. You had Wonder Woman prior to that. There was definitely female superheroes, but that particular show, the way it was structured, it was kind of a groundbreaking new sort of thing, and and I think that's why people just loved it so much, especially kids. Everybody related to it, because if you're in high school, you were like, I'm going through that right now. It was extreme, there was the extreme elements to it, but at the base of it, the core of it, it was dealing with real issues that people really, really related to. I mean, I've met so many fans at conventions and heard so many stories about how, I'll give one example, which was really powerful. I was at this convention in Vancouver years ago, and I mean, Katie was there, Ron Rubin was there, and this guy came up to us. It was one of those paid, like where it was a lunch, but it was only limited to a certain amount of people. It was like VIP, and this guy came up to us and basically told us a story about how when he was young and he was in high school, and he was bullied, and he was very lonely, and tried to commit suicide. And then after he did, thank God he lived, and when he was recovering, I mean, he seriously hurt himself. And while he was home recovering, he started watching Sailor Moon.
Mm-hmm.
And it basically, like, these were his words. He said it saved his life. And I was, all of us were like, really, like something like that? And like, to us, it was just a fun animated show. And, and that's the power of stuff like that. When it has themes that people really relate to, it can be life changing. I know for me, there's plenty of movies and animated shows and things that I've seen that have changed my life, and I think that's why I love doing what I do.
Yeah, I actually have it's a production sketch like actually used in the show of
Oh wow! Oh cool!
like
Would you? That's awesome.
it's Darien, Serena, Rini,
Yeah.
Amara, and then Michelle.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, that's great, man.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
It's actually my main hobby is collecting like animation cells for anime.
Oh,
So
cool. Right on.
yeah.
Well, that's awesome. I've got a couple of those from stuff I've done that they've given me as gifts, and they're back in LA.
Okay.
I have them framed. We used to have them up in our office in our house in LA, but we rent that out and we live in New York now. So it's all just storage boxes somewhere. But yeah, and I love those. I love those too. They're probably my favorite sort of memorabilia from stuff I've done is whenever I get the cells, because it's the original sort of the actual thing that we use to shoot the show. So it's kind of cool.
I know, of course, that there's a big affinity with your role as Carlos in the Resident Evil game.
Yeah. Yeah, that was fun. I enjoyed doing that. I had a good time. Yeah, and I get a lot of people, were big fans of that game.
And another darker TV movie I was curious about, Hangman.
Oh yeah, that was fun to shoot with Diamond Phillips.
Yeah, and Madchen Amick.
Yeah, Madchen Amick. Yeah, she was great. She was tons of fun. Dan Loria, who played from the Wonder Years, who played his chief. Mark. Yeah, there was a ton of people. That was a fun movie. I enjoyed shooting that. That film. I remember just shooting I feel like every day was like 18 hours, and then the final day of shooting was more than 24 hours on our final day to finish it. Yeah, and I believe, I'm pretty sure it was that film when we finished shooting. I think it was my birthday.
Oh,
but it was supposed to be the next day. Like I went to set thinking it's December 5th. Oh, we'll be finished shooting, and then I'll come home, sleep, and tomorrow's my birthday. We shot all the way through into the next day. By the time we wrapped, it was like morning, and it was like, oh, it's my birthday. So it was kind of a wild, thing to end a movie like that and go, I thought I was going to be finished before, but I'm officially older now. A day older. Yeah, that was a fun shoot. Lou was great. Fun to work on, man. Fun to work with. We had a good time on that film.
Who's been the most starstruck in terms of people you've worked with?
The most, yeah, I couldn't really tell you. I'm just, it's just an honor to get to work with anybody. I've worked with Ted Danson, and I remember meeting Ted because he was we did this MOW together, Thanks of a Grateful Nation, and I've actually also worked with him on CSI. But the sweetest thing about him was I was in hair and makeup, and he came into the hair and makeup trailer, and I loved that. I mean, here he is, Ted Danson. Cheers is one of the. At one point he was the highest paid, one of the most famous people on the planet.
Yeah. And
as he walks into the makeup truck, he walked right over and he was like, "Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Ted Danson." And as if you wouldn't. And I mean, it was legit. It was just a genuine, honest, no assumption. He's like, maybe you do know who I am, maybe you don't. So I'm not going to assume, and just introduce himself as a regular, which was really sweet. I remember, taking that with me. I was like, yeah, that's how everybody should be. It doesn't matter. We're all, at the end of the day, we're all just humans doing what we love, and we're lucky to get to do what we love and get paid for it. So, and that was early on in my career. And I just remember always thinking, yeah, that's how it should be. It doesn't matter. And I think that's maybe why I don't get starstruck, why I don't feel that way too, is I just kind of always think we're just human beings, right? We all have to sleep. We all have to eat, we breathe oxygen. So I go, at the end of the day, we're all actually on the same playing field, on the same level playing field. It's just some of us have a little more status, in the business, and a little more money.
And were you still in Canada when you worked on that Stupid Man, like with Milla Jovovich and William Baldwin?
Yes, yes. Oh, wow, that takes me back. Yeah, right. I was her boyfriend, right? I was her
Yeah.
boyfriend. Yeah, yeah. I barely remember that film. That was a weird shoot. Um, Again, that was another. That was one of those like projects that I did where, I wasn't a lead, so I was a supporting character. I only had a couple days of shooting, but you have to come in and have like as if you have this history with this person, like we're boyfriend and girlfriend, and
Right.
it's Milla Jovovich. I have never met her. I mean, I know her from other things, and she's a famous actress, and all of a sudden you have to create this relationship really quickly, and they're busy like as leads. I've been in that position too before where when you're a lead, you have a lot more on your plate. You got a lot more work that you're doing, lines to memorize, work to do. As a sporting character, I come in, I've got a couple lines. It's easy. So what's interesting is you think, not myself, but a lot of people, fans or people outside the business think, oh, you would have got to know her because you guys played boyfriend girlfriend.
Right.
For us, like literally she was constantly whenever we weren't on set and action was being called, she was, when they would yell cut, she'd be like memorizing lines or busy doing stuff, and I'd just be hanging out, having a coffee, or because I don't have as much work to do. But we didn't really hang out or talk, a little bit here and there, in between scenes, but mostly you're just doing it at the moment when the director's like action, and so I've had a couple of times where people ask me questions, what was she like? I'm like, I, yeah, don't really. She seemed great. She was really sweet, but beyond the few minutes that we spent shooting together, I didn't really get to know her. And yet and yet you have to establish like that we're a boyfriend and girlfriend. But that's the beauty of what we do. It's make believe.
Mm-hmm. And I know another really good movie that you got to be part of that was kind of ahead of its time was Soldier's Girl.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That was yeah. I was really proud to be a part of that. And Lee Pace, man, what a brilliant actor. Jeez. I don't remember what the scene was exactly, but I just remember being on set waiting. I was about to shoot something next, so they called me to set, and he was doing a scene. I again don't remember exactly where the context of it at the time, but it was really powerful. And I just had no idea who this kid was. I think at the time he had just graduated from Juilliard.
Yeah.
But I remember turning to a buddy of mine on set and just going, "Oh, this guy's gonna be a superstar. This guy's gonna, I mean, what an actor, what a gutsy performance in that movie too." And Troy Garrity, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah, he was fantastic in it too. Yeah, I was really proud to be a part of that movie.
And one of my signature questions is just like voiceover or on camera, what's the most like darkest, emotionally intense headspace you've had to go into for a role?
Wow, that's tough. I mean, I've played a lot of murderers, played some bad people. I mean, I think one of the more challenging pieces I ever did was The Ride. It was a TV movie called The Ride up in Canada. It was the movie centered around a group of taxi drivers. My character, his story begins where this girl randomly gets into his vehicle. Actually, oh no, Emily Hampshire. I was gonna blank on her name for a second there. Schitt's Creek. She played, and she gets into my car and then says, "Take me to heaven." And as a taxi driver, and what was clever about it is that there's a bar called Heaven, so he thinks she means take her to the bar. So he drives her to this bar, and then he's like, "Okay, lady, it's $20 or whatever." And she's like, "No," I said, "Take me to heaven." And she's not, she's obviously got mental issues. She's not in the right headspace. And then she pulls out a knife and puts it to my neck and is like, "I want you to take me to heaven." I'm like, "Oh, okay. And so the movie begins like that, and it's it was multiple nights of shooting that sequence because the driving with the knife at my neck, and then we pull up to I somehow alert my dispatcher that this is happening. They call the cops. They end up shooting and killing her in the car. Mm-hmm. And then the rest of the movie, my character from there is dealing with this whole thing of like seeing that happen, and he's trying to contemplate like why did that happen to him, you know, and why did that happen to her. So it wasn't necessarily dark as far as me playing a dark character, because like I said, I played Lucky Luciano, I played some bad people, you know, I played murders, and so I've definitely done some you know, mean, nasty things. But having to delve into the movie was very, like, I had a lot of scenes where I didn't have dialogue, but just long sequences where, you know, where there's just stuff going on. And so having to, basically you have to have a full dialogue, really, you know what's going on in your own mind in order to create that reality. The movie was very much about that, like suicide and that kind of stuff, and death. And so it was just constantly living in a bit of a dark space. Cruel Justice. It's Cruel Justice.
Okay.
A. Martinez plays the dad, and I play this awful person who rapes, like picks up girls and rapes them.
Oh.
And then A. Martinez plays the father of one of the girls I rape, and then basically I get off. It goes to trial, and I get off. Mm-hmm. My defense attorney gets me off, and so he ends up, you know, tracking me down and killing me, and killing me, you know. And so then the rest of the movie is about, you know, vigilante justice, that kind of thing. That was a dark character. That was a pretty dark character. And what was odd about it too is when I would show up to set, which I get, you know, the rest of the main cast didn't really want to hang out with me. Yeah. You know what I mean? So like at lunchtime, I'd be kind of off by myself eating lunch, and the rest of the cast was hanging out together, talking, laughing and stuff. And, you know, so it was a awful feeling. But I understood it too. I understood from their perspective. They were like, we don't really want to buddy with you because we have to do some really ugly stuff in about an hour from now after we digest. And, yeah. You know what I mean? So, you know, even though we're all professional actors, and, you know, everybody was polite. And I said, I'm friends with Christian Campbell, and, you know, no one was mean or anything. And it makes sense. I can appreciate that. Like when you have to do that kind of heavy stuff, it's like, you don't want to remember, oh, we just were telling jokes at lunch together. And, you know, but that was, so from an acting perspective, that was a pretty dark role, but it was also personally a very isolating shoot for me. Every time I'd come to set, I'd be like, I guess I'll just stay in my trailer until they call me, because nobody really wants me around right now. You know what I mean? I don't blame anybody. I was like, I didn't like myself very much, the character I was playing either. So, yeah.
And so when you got to LA, what was the first job that you got?
I don't even remember. You probably know. You probably haven't. You know more about me than I do. I don't remember. What's the first gig I did in Los Angeles? Was it 24? No.
I think, would it have been Without a Trace?
Oh, maybe it was. I think it was Without a Trace. I think you're right. I think it was Without a Trace. Yeah. I think it was Without a Trace. Thank you for bailing me out on that one. I'm gonna phone a friend. I'm gonna use one of my lifelines and phone a friend. Yeah, I think it was Without a Trace. That was a fun shoot. Anthony LaPaglia was great. Good people on that. Actually, I came across it the other night. I was scrolling HBO, like, you know, adding some new stuff to watch on HBO, like King Richard, and all of a sudden, I can't remember. I was just scrolling through like what's available, what's new, you know, and I see Without a Trace. So I'm like, what? And I couldn't remember for the life of me what episode number, what season I was on. So I'd go into the seasons and I'm just scrolling, you know, I knew it was like a few seasons in. So of course I could have just picked up my phone and went to IMDb and just went, what episode were you in? But no, I was like, just scrolling through, and I finally found my episode. It was like, God, it would have been about a month and a half ago or something like that, or maybe, yeah, because it couldn't have been King Richard. That just came out, so it was about a month and a half ago. So I was adding something else on HBO, and I ended up watching it. I was like, what was that episode about? But it was fun because we got to do some, you know, different stuff. I mean, I played a bank robber in it, but also war veterans. So there was all the war footage that we got to shoot with the tanks, you know, and then we also shot the bank robber scene stuff. So, you know, and then there's the interrogation stuff. And then, so it was a really, that was a fun shoot to just be able to do all those different pieces, you know, and jumping around timeline.
Sort of like a couple of years or 2 or 3 years after that was when you would have been involved in Kingdom Hearts.
Yep. Yeah. Very shortly after that. Yeah. A few years after that. Yeah. I started playing Ienzo Zexion. Yeah. Yeah. That's been a fun gig. That's one of those things, right? You do stuff and you go, I remember getting the gig thinking, yeah, this seems like fun, you know, it's a really cool Disney kind of tie-ins, all this stuff, and these interesting characters that are, you know, but at the time I had no clue what it was. And then you're working with producers and directors that are being conferenced in from Japan, like from overseas. Then there's like footage being uploaded and stuff when we're recording. So at the time, it's one of those, you know, that's the beauty of circling back to what we started talking about earlier, where the freedom and the beauty of being behind a microphone, that where all those pieces are happening and none of it makes sense. Like at the time, I had no clue really all I knew is what my character was, what they sent me. My character, right. I you know, because it was all, you have to sign non-disclosure agreements, you know, which is still a big thing in our biz. It's actually become even more, like pretty much anything you do now, you sign a non-disclosure, so you can't talk about anything new. And so they had basically sent me just my sides. So I have no context really of who I am in this world, what's happening, just what I'm recording. And then you have, you know, the creators in Japan, like explaining things over, you know, a conference call, and then you just do it, and it becomes, you know, and then it becomes this worldwide global, you know, game that people love. And you know, and at the time I still look back and go, I can still remember that first session. I remember walking out going, what the hell did I just do? What did I record? Like, what? I don't even, you know, it was fun. I remember in the moment, like doing the, you know, and creating the voice and, you know, his sort of sinister kind of thoughtful sound, and, you know, I mean, but he's not really he's not an overtly bad guy, you know, or at least for Zexion. I mean, Ienzo is the you know, his counterpart, his alternate self. But even that, I remember them explaining to me that in the first session. Once we got, like, we did multiple sessions in the first game. So once I was about 3 or 4 sessions in, I was like, oh, this is starting to make more sense to me. But I remember that first session being, I have no idea what they're talking about. I'll just do this and let's see if they like that. And then they're like, yeah. Or they'll be like, maybe this. I'm okay, I'll do that. And, you know, and you walk out going, I don't know what this is going to be, you know. And now it's, you know, everywhere I go, people are always like, oh my God, I love Zexion, or I love his hair.
Yeah.
I love him too, man. He's awesome. Like, you know, I love always whenever they call and say, hey, we got some new stuff to do. I'm like, yay. Of course, then I can never say anything about it because I have to sign my non-disclosure agreements, and it takes 3 years before the cat's out of the bag.
Mm. Did they fly you back to LA then to do Kingdom Hearts 3?
No, once we moved to New York. No, I have a studio in my apartment.
Okay.
Like I built when we bought this place, we got renovated, and we took one of the closets in our bedroom and had that turned into a studio in there. So I mean, I basically live in there now. It's pretty much, especially during this pandemic, you know, you don't go anywhere. So no, I did Kingdom Hearts. I did it from right down the last stuff we did was right down that hallway, that dark hole way in the background there. There's a studio down there.
What about with him? Is there anything that you could relate personally to Zexion?
Would it be wrong if I say that he's intelligent? No, again, you know, it's hard to say. There's just bits and pieces of any character that you can always relate to because we're all humans, right? We all feel. So I did like, I like that he's a more thoughtful, almost isolated kind of character. Ironically, I come off as a very, you know, exuberant kind of outgoing person, which I am in public. I love hanging out with friends and getting together and having dinners, and, you know, doing things with my wife and seeing shows, or, you know, but one of my favorite things too is just being by myself and reading, or I get all kinds of emails from different places, of like what's going on in artificial intelligence and stuff like that. And I love to read articles about stuff like that. So that aspect, I think that that's kind of my sort of, and I think that's what helped influence The Voice. He's not an exuberant person. So it's a little more of that kind of, thoughtful, introverted kind of sound. And I think that's probably the biggest thing I relate to him with.
I was going to say that I would guess that the most fun you've had with the voiceover role is in Braceface.
Yeah, I mean, I had a blast doing that, but partly because a lot of times, I wouldn't say it's hard to say what's the most fun I've ever had.
Okay.
There's a lot of fun. I mean, I loved playing Chicken Dance. It was my very first animated thing that I'd ever done. So I think maybe that's part of the reason why I always loved that, just because it was also the first time I ever got to do that. It was my first professional animation job. And then being able to play, Ventura, I can hear them in there scratching around. Such a odd, something that, imagine 27 years ago, it'll be 27 years ago next Monday. So there was something incredibly fun about that for a kid who's just starting out in his career, getting to play that kind of a wacky voice. But yeah, one of the things I loved about Braceface was many times when you do animation or video games, you record by yourself. You don't often, occasionally you get to be in the room with other people. Like when I did Scooby-Doo, we were all in the room together, which is, man, that's one of my favorite jobs ever. Just being in the room with Frank Welker, Casey Kasem. I mean, it was like, it was fantastic. And seeing them go to work, watching Frank Welker play Scooby, Fred, and the villain in my episode. And he did a scene where he's attacking him. The villain is attacking Fred, and then Scooby jumps in to help save Fred. Frank does it in one take.
Yeah.
All different voices, all three voices, all at the same time. And literally, I swear to God, my wife came to watch. She came with me to see that session, because I was like, "Oh, you got to come! Come on! It's going to be epic." And both of us still to this day, I swear, Frank was actually doing overlap, where I'm like, "That's not possible. He can't do two voices at the same time. He's one person, right?" But it was so seamless that. It was unbelievable, where he was just jumping back and forth between the villain, Freddy, and Scooby. It was unreal. That's one of my favorite gigs. But Braceface, again, one of the fun things about it was I got to be in the room with Daniel DeSanto, who played Brock, who played my best friend in the show. Mm-hmm. And so the two of us, we always talk to each other on Facebook and communicate. It was just fun. It was two buddies just playing. We were friends in the biz and knew each other from biz, and so we just got to, we just have a lot of fun in the sessions together, because we got to, and again, when you have another actor that you can bounce off of, it's just much more, it's more authentic. You get better moments. It's more real, as opposed to me having to imagine what the person's going to say if I'm reacting, if I'm saying a line and I have to react to somebody. It's great when you can have that other person in the room, but for scheduling purposes, and for the sake of getting clean takes, I understand why we record separately a lot of the times. Mm-hmm. But when you can be in a room with the other actors, it's much more fun. It's just, you get to play,
Yeah.
So that is one of my favorite gigs for sure. But because of that perspective, I mean, I think I will always be fond of Chicken Dance, because it was such a wacky, to be 22 or 21 at the time, whatever I was, and to get to do that Ventura voice, and and it was my first ever animated job. So mm-hmm. I loved doing Sailor Moon. It was so much fun, and I got to play so many. I got to be Alan in the Doomtree series, and and I played a villain or two here and there. I don't remember which ones though, because we banged them out so fast. Iterations of Tuxedo Mask throughout the years too, the different characters. So I loved doing that too. The only thing that there's not as much freedom when you're doing dubbing, what I mean? And especially with the band, you have to You know, it's more of a technical thing that you're doing.
Mm-hmm. And this is just a general question with the Sailor Moon cast. Did you know, because one of the other main voice actors that then moved to LA was Sarah LaFleur. Did you know her at all?
Yeah. Sarah and I had the same agent back in Canada. Yeah, I know Sarah. Yeah. Okay. We actually ended up the same agent in LA as well. So
okay.
Yeah, I knew Sarah very well. Yeah. She's a sweetheart.
Yeah, because I talked to Barbara Radecki a while ago, and like nobody knows where Sarah is now.
And I would have to second that. I have no idea where Sarah LaFleur is. I have no idea. And we've been in New York now for almost 10 years. I remember she was with my voice agency in LA, but I don't know if she stayed or she left at some point. So the last time I would have saw her, I want to say is maybe 15 years ago, something like that. Maybe 12 to 15, something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Barbara's a sweetheart. She's such a nice person. And so, I mean, you know, she's so intelligent, book writer, like it's just incredible. Right. Yeah. We were very lucky, actually. We had a lot of awesome people, a lot of great Canadian talent in Sailor Moon, and good people. I mean, we're Canadian, so we're naturally good people. It's just who we are. But yeah, it was a great cast, great group of people. Ron Rubin's a sweetheart. Tony Daniels, you know, him and I have done a couple conventions together. He's a great guy. David Fraser, Katie, Susan. I love Susan. She's sweet. She's a legend. Mm-hmm. Linda Valentine and I went to Ryerson together. She went to university together, studied acting. I had a lot of fun memories. Also, my original acting mentor, Louis Beaumander, was in later seasons, he became the director. Roland Parliament was also my teacher at Ryerson. He taught me microphone technique classes. And he was one of the first, he was the first director I worked with. And then Louis came in as well. So for me, Sailor Moon has all these crazy crossover tie-ins into my personal life and friendships and stuff like that. And I imagine that's similar for a lot of the cast, because we worked on it for quite a few years. And then because of its universal love and fanship out there, you know, it's also kept all of us in touch, like Toby Proctor, Reno, like all of us, you know, we still keep in contact with friends on Facebook. And, so there's something magical and wonderful about that project.
That's my final question with interviews, is always asking, what do you want your legacy to be?
What do I want my legacy to be? Well, that's loaded. Legacy. I don't know if I'm going to have a legacy. First of all, what I'd like my legacy to be is having a legacy. That's what I would like it to be, is just to have a legacy. Ultimately, for me, one of the biggest things I always wanted to do when I first started, when I knew I wanted to be an actor, is I just wanted to be part of meaningful things, you know, stuff that just made people think and you know, maybe contemplate something that they hadn't thought of before, maybe help open their perspectives to, you know, things they had never experienced. You know, going back to like you bringing up Soldier's Girl, that is a project I'm super proud of, because it dealt, especially at the time, like that movie was, you know, gosh, like 20 odd years ago. Yeah. At the time, you know, still, it was a very, very different world. And so to make a movie like that I think ultimately that's the stuff I'm the most proud of, and the kind of stuff that I would love to do more of as my career continues. And there's still a place for pure entertainment, but a lot of times, even shows that are even some of the things I've worked on that are just fun or pure entertainment, they always have, if they connect, it's because they have something deeper going on, which hopefully get the opportunity to do a lot of projects like that just make people, you know, think and grow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and touching on what you talked about earlier with Sailor Moon, it was also instrumental with helping me realize and be comfortable with my sexuality when I was really young. And it took a while for me to be comfortable with, like, of course, saying that I was gay. So that was something that like instilled in my head at an early age.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm proud of Sailor Moon for that too. I wish. What's sad is I'm sure you've had a few people say this because we were, like I said, we banged those episodes out into the Rhythm Man. There were so many times that we didn't really get to really take in some of the stuff that we were doing in the show. You know, I mean, it was just so fast. Or even if you did, even if you had a moment where you'd be like, wow, that was pretty heavy, or that was pretty interesting, you'd be like, well, no time to dwell, like moving on to the next episode or the next scene. That's one of the things I'm really proud about that show is it dealt with a lot of different issues and a lot of, you know, and for the time, you were going back like, how, 25, 20 years ago now at this point. Yeah. So it was pretty groundbreaking. I'm very proud to be a part of that.
Well, thanks. I'm glad that we finally got to do this.
Yeah, me too. I'm sorry I kept having to delay you. It's been a wacky year and a half ever since my mom had a stroke, and so I've, you know, taking care of my parents a lot. And then with a pandemic, it's not easy being in New York and they're in Canada. So I apologize for. I know you. I kept saying, you know, check back in another month, and then I'd be like, yeah, just check back another month. I feel so bad for putting you off, and I'm glad we finally got to connect, man. All right, well, happy holidays, man.
Yeah, you too.
All right, take care.